You're listening to The Invisible Addiction, a podcast series investigating problem gambling in the UK. In this episode, I speak with Darren, a former gambling addict who's since set up Roulette online to raise awareness about problem gambling and to help people reach out for support. I wanted to find out about his story. When did betting become a problem? What effect did his addiction have on his personal relationships? How did he recover? Darren shares plenty of advice and tips for people who want to stop gambling, and you can reach out to him online. I'll leave his links in the description box below. Finally, if you haven't already, do check out theinvisibleaddiction.com with links to podcasts, vlogs, blog posts, and more importantly, support networks in the UK for people struggling with gambling problems. Without further ado, here is the conversation between Darren and I. Enjoy! All right, so we've got Darren on the other end of the line today, and Darren and I, we've just started having this really nice discussion.
Yeah, we got in pretty deep.
We got straight in, didn't we? So it became apparent. I was like, oh damn it, just press record. So it's kind of we are rewinding a little bit. So firstly, let me ask Darren, how's it going? How are you?
Good, man. Good. How's lockdown life treating you?
It's not too bad. It's not too bad. This is like deja vu.
I've got a feeling of deja vu, yeah.
Well, do you know what? Should we just, I don't know, do you want to just kick off maybe just like, just for the listeners' benefit, just sort of say a little bit more about your background and experience, maybe
Sure.
You want to talk about your story. I very much want to make it conversational, but really just to pick your brains really today. So, I don't know if you want to just kick us off really.
Yeah, sure. That sounds like the easiest thing to talk about, but I always find that the most difficult because where to start from it, and I can pinpoint where it went wrong for me. My introduction to gambling was from an early age. I'm the classic sort of, here, put on a horse, 50p, pick a good name of the horse, and going to the football. My dad used to play amateur football, so I was out there most weekends. And I was a guy I was a kid going around the guys handing out the sweepers, getting all the bets in and that kind of thing. Going, at that time you could go along to the bookies and put bets on, and the person behind the counter wouldn't really bat an eyelid. So I've always had some sort of association and exposure to gambling when I was young, but problems didn't really arise for me until online gambling became massive. Because before that, it was all very controlled and good-natured, and it was something that was very a part of our culture and our friends, my social group. And it wasn't really a problem. When the bookies started installing the FOBTs, that's where it went steadily downhill for me.
Yeah.
I've never been a great gambler. I never won a lot of money, but it didn't stop me from piling a lot of my wages into the FOBTs. That sped up the process, and I used to spend quite a lot of time in there, and when the bookies closed, I'd go home and continue online. What I tend to describe to people is I was living a double life because no one really knew the extent of my gambling, because it's something I've done for so long, and it's something I've spoken about openly. But then when the shit really sort of hit the fan for me, it was really a spell of a year or two where I did so much damage to my own mental health, really, financially, and just got myself into quite a rut. Then from there, just to fast forward with the Roulette Out page, I'd made a promise to myself that if I could give up gambling, along with not being tempted to gamble, that's also important to me. I think you have to associate the two. If I'm not only giving up gambling, but completely gamble free and not even tempted to gamble, then I would reach out to try and help others. And I reached that 2-year mark, and I started volunteering for gambling therapy. Right. On their online support there in their live chat line. And then I was done with it. I was quite happy to sort of kick gambling to the back, not talk about it, not really do anything with it ever again. But then I realised that with my experience, it would be beneficial for a lot of people if I told my story online and start some sort of support page. And that was So that's been 5 years now that I've been gamble free, and I've been doing the Roulette out page for the last 2 years.
Excellent.
There you go. There's a bridge story for you.
So it's the brief synopsis. Yeah. No, we'll. I mean, to be honest with you, if it's all right, we'll just dive in, and I'm very good at sort of trying to meander in and out of these topics and stuff like that. So I don't know. I don't know. Chronologically, talking about fixed odd betting terminals, FOBTs. For me, that was a big. No, well, that's how I got started as well. And what games were you playing? Was it roulette or?
Funnily enough, it was roulette. Yeah, the reason why my page, I'm not an expert on roulette, or it's not. I mean, the thing is as well, I'm not anti-gambling. It's I think the page can be a bit misleading. So it looks like let's get rid of all gambling. It's not that. But roulette it's been it's impacted my life so much. The roulette wheel, the sounds, the experience, everything still haunts me a wee bit with it. It's had such a big impact. And I used to just sit in the bookies and pile money in, and I don't need to tell you how it feels, but when you lose money, you black out. You don't make sensible decisions. You literally march yourself to the cash machine. Sometimes you can't even remember doing this in hindsight. And then you're in, and you're literally just spewing money into the roulette. And I was betting as much as I could in that day. So your bank, you can only take out 300 at a time. So that was my limit, and I'd reached that limit so often. And then it just wasn't enough. And then I was going back home, lying to my girlfriend, my wife now, saying I'm online doing X, Y, and Z, and I'm literally on roulette again. And then when I wasn't having much luck with roulette, then I moved to slots. And then when I wasn't having much luck with slots, I moved to everything.
Really?
All the sort of rubbishy card games you can think of, virtual dogs, all this kind of stuff. It was just it just got out of hand pretty quickly.
Do you think that was a lot of it? Obviously, was just trying to chase your money. That's a typical kind of trait, isn't it?
Yeah, it was that initially, and it's such a complex one to explain, because it's initially, I think most gamblers are in it for the money. They feel that, okay, I can beat the system. I know a bit about football. I can do this. I can make a wee bit of money. And when I first started gambling, I was making a wee bit of money. But I was never, the way I am, I'm never happy enough. I want to, I always need more. And that's for most things in my life. But gambling was a perfect storm for that kind of attitude and that sort of character trait. And it then eventually didn't become about the money, because I was blowing thousands, and I don't have thousands, man. I've been working living wage my whole life. I don't have money to throw around. And after the fact, when you've blown this money, there's no connection. Especially when you're gambling online. I think the comparison between being in the bookies and online, at least in the bookies, you can control yourself in a way that once you run out of money, you run out of money. That's it. I can't go back to the cash machine and take out any more, so it's done. So at least for that day, it's done, and you can mull on that and think about that when you get home. But with online, man, I was just unchecked, going crazy, just thousands piling into roulette. And then the worst, I mean, I've had a couple of really rough nights, but the worst was £500 spins on roulette.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh
and losing.
Were you betting at that point? I mean, talking method, were you just piling it on like the 2-to-1 odds? Was it even odd, or were you just putting like your lucky numbers?
No, I had no strategy, no consistency, and no sort of control over what I was doing. I was getting very delusional on lucky numbers and systems and whatever it was. To try and beat the roulette table, and because I'm so scattered in that way of thinking, it was such a perfect recipe to lose money, because I had no control. And even times when I won roulette, I would log off my computer. You get that euphoric high, and then literally 5 minutes later, that high wears off, and the anxiety kicks in, and the laptop's back open, and I'm piling back in what I've won. And you start to make so many weird connections with your money, and try and reason with yourself to why you're doing things. But at the end of the day, when you get to that point, of when you're compulsively gambling like that, you're not well anymore, and that's not something I'd recognized back then, because it's you associate with you being the fuck up and you being the problem, and this is all you, and this is you doing this, but you're not. I'm big on mindset, because the penny didn't drop for me back then that, I've done some damage to my brain. I'm addicted to something.
Yeah.
Okay, I've made some mistakes, but I am now in a position where I really need help to get over this, and to get over that hump of realizing that it's you now need that help and support, and it's not just you being such a fuck up in your gambling. Then that's the point that you can kick forward, that you can move forward, because it's until then, and it's such a dark and damaging rut that you can get yourself in.
Oh no, no, totally. I mean, I can just relate a lot to that. I mean, for me, it was roulette. Throughout, I started gambling kind of at 18. Football accumulators were the bets that I kind of got into. We'd go down the bookies, and then I was introduced to the roulette, the shredder, as me and my mates would call it, and
Right.
the old shredder. And and we, I would just go down, and it's funny actually. I've still got a diary. I used to keep a diary, bizarrely, handwritten diary, but throughout sort of between sort of 18 to 21 at university and stuff. But there were times when I was I actually went back to my parents and I flicked through my diary, and it was just most days actually I didn't realise until now. You kind of look back and you reflect, bloody hell, I was going to the bookies most days, betting on the roulette. And I always had a lucky number. Black 17 was like, that was my number. That was the only thing I truly cared about, really, was just that number. And there was, I've got so many stories that I could tell, but perhaps I'll share them another time. But I mean, like, one of the things was sorry, I've lost my train of thought, hang on. Was about the gambling. It's like I started to kind of go to the bookies, and then I started to try and beat the system. I would then bring a pen and paper with me, and just write down like the numbers that were coming out, trying to formulate a system of like, right, trying to predict it, when in actual fact it's just completely random pot luck. I mean,
it's completely random.
It's like I spoke to a chap the other day who said that apparently roulette used to only be legal in Monte Carlo because they knew how bloody addictive it was. And now, you've got people, you can do it on your mobile phone. It's absolutely nuts. So yeah, I've got a lot to say. But so you spoke about like trying to get help. What did that look like when you got to that point of like reaching out?
Well, it was a perfect storm for me in terms of really moving on, because I had tried a lot of things up until that point, and it kept failing because I didn't realize that I didn't really know what support was out there. So I reached out a couple of times. I had some bad experiences when I reached out, because I was still in a point of denial and lying to myself. So, for example, I got free counselling, and I convinced the counsellor that I didn't have a gambling problem. So I just sat there for an hour and told her, yeah, I'm all right, I've got it under control, that kind of thing. So it's like I've made the effort to get counselling, and then the counsellor says, well, it doesn't sound like you have a gambling problem. I'm like, yeah, I'm glad you agree with me. Walk out the door.
Easy to lie, isn't it?
Yeah, and then go back, and then I had a really bad night where I lost $1,000 on roulette, and I called. I can't, it's just a thing. It's such a blur, man. But I remember calling like a support line, and the guy had told me on the line, well, have you thought about just closing your laptop down and putting it away? I'm like, man, like, if I could do that, I would, but it's not really the point. I mean, that's not going to help me. And I'm not kind of saying don't reach out for support at any of these places. I'm just telling you where it was for me at that time. So then I went on a wee journey of self-help, and I was getting into some issues at work at the time with attention to detail and stuff like that. Getting really distracted, and this was in the midst of my me gambling. And a girl at my work was training to be a life coach. And at that time in my life, I was quite sort of flippant and arrogant to anything to do with mindfulness, anything to do with self-help. And I always thought it was a bit airy-fairy, and, that's, you just kind of got to grit it out and that kind of thing. And that's the reason why I was getting nowhere with helping myself with gambling, because I had that attitude and mindset. So she said to me that, do you want some free life coaching? We'll see where it takes us, blah, 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 blah. I was like, okay, no worries, no worries. So we met up, and within a week or two, I was like, shit, there's something to this. And then I think it was the third week, gambling came up naturally. And all it is she's asking questions, you're giving the answers. She's not putting anything in your head, you're taking yourself there. And but there's a skill to that, And I just opened up about my gambling, and what had happened after that meeting is I felt like my mind was blown, like I'd never felt so clear. And it was just all of a sudden everything made sense. I was like, okay, Jesus, I need to really, it's my mindset's a problem here. So, I tell people that there's a process to go through, and you do what's right for you. You got to physically stop yourself financially from gambling. That's the first thing. So you can't do any more damage. And then you've got to go on like a journey of just putting things in place that are going to complement. It's got to be a whole package. It's not just one thing that you're going to be able to stop gambling. You have to adapt and be open to trying all sorts of different things. So with the coaching, literally from that week on, I just went, okay, I feel open, I feel clear. Let's just pile some things in and see what happens. I started hypnosis, I started meditation. I started just being more open and honest with myself about things, and then it became so much easier from there on. And then I realized like that was the most powerful high I could have possibly gotten out of all the things I've done in my life. That feeling after that session of coaching was just as powerful and just as it was such an important time for me. And then from there I managed to, my work was giving me grief, so they set me up with psychologists because they were worried about me. Again, not through, I've always been a good worker, I've always been very reliable. It was just a case of, obviously at that time, people were seeing things in me that I wasn't seeing in myself. Went to psychologists, got a diagnosis of ADHD, which again, I went in there, convinced the psychologist, I was like, everything's fine, blah, blah, blah. And then he turned around to me at the end of the session and he said, yes, you're classic ADHD, and I want to, start putting you on medication. And I was really, like, genuinely shocked because I didn't want to go down that route. Yeah, and my wife.
Did you think you had ADHD? Did you think at the time you thought, oh, I've got ADHD, or no. Again, was this just another like, no, definitely not,
No, definitely not. I didn't even believe in it at the time. And then all of a sudden, it's like I speak to my wife and I'm like, do you notice, is there things, after years of being together, I was like, is there things I do that bug you, And she's like, yeah. And then she went into psychology. She got called into the room and we had an open chat. And I was just like, wow, I cannot believe I've just sailed through life, not even remotely seeing what other people are seeing. And it literally changed my life. And and I'm not a big. I've got so much respect for anyone that's willing to sort of be open and willing to change themselves. And I'm open for anything because I'm not. It's not like I get up in the morning. It's like, right, I have my morning coffee and I do my 30 minutes of meditation, and then at night time, I read a book. I'm not like that at all.
So you don't strike me like that at all, no.
No, I'm not at all. But the difference is if I could feel myself. For example, lockdown, it's been a massive kick in the balls for people because people going through recovery and addiction, it's all about routine and structure, and that's been so important for me as well. If I don't have routine and structure, my world just crumbles around there. So not having that, I've realised that okay, so lockdown's potentially going to be problematic for me. Then I'll go back to things. I'll go back to doing like a wee bit of meditation or a wee bit of reading. All it takes is for me to just sort of dip my toe back into that world, and I feel like I'm centered and reset again. So it's important tools to have in your arsenal. I say that to people.
I was going to say because I think it's really easy to say to somebody to stop. Stop smoking or stop gambling. Especially for me. And I'm not blaming my parents at all, but it would be, they kind of found out about it and it's like, right, just stop, and obviously to get to that point in itself is tough. It's funny because just before our conversation started, I'm trying to put together an Instagram post about self-exclusion and I, talk about my story about how I self-excluded from casinos. And that was like the best thing I did because I didn't realize it was all casinos, every single casino. And trust me, as a compulsive gambler, I try to get back in.
Sure.
But they were like, no, you're banned from every, and that was great. It was a phone call that was really quick. But obviously to then stop online, obviously that becomes a lot tougher, because you've got to go onto the website, you've got to then, download the forms or whatever. But I guess it's interesting what you've mentioned is actually the tools and the techniques about the recovery, because I don't think, again, I'm almost just paraphrasing from a chap I spoke to recently, but it's like, what did you do to kind of recover? So you spoke about meditation, having routine, having structure. I mean, I'm just trying to get in your psyche of like, obviously telling someone is like cleansing your soul, isn't it? I mean, for me, like, it's that cliche that a weight off my shoulders and stuff, but it really bloody was. For me, it was like telling the whole frigging world, on the podcast that I did, but it was strangely like cathartic. But so yeah, do you have, I mean, you've spoken about triggers in your blog posts and stuff like that. So can you tell us, like, what are the triggers, or what are the things that, what are the tools and the techniques that you do to kind of, to stop?
It's I mean, I've kind of laid out, I've exhausted, I feel, on my page now, all the things I could possibly pass on, because the whole point of the page was I'm sitting on the knowledge here of being able to get over something that was really hard to do, and it would be it'd be foolish and really kind of unhelpful for anyone else if I don't pass on what I did. And it's, as I said, like, it all cores from mindset for me. You have to you've got to want to give up gambling first and foremost, but you've got to also believe in yourself. And I know how hard that is, because when I was in the midst of gambling, I didn't believe in myself. I was telling myself all sorts of things. I've got such a I did have such a grim outlook to stuff, where I'm like, I didn't go to uni, so I'm always going to be working shit jobs. I'm always going to be unhappy. I'm probably always going to be addicted to gambling. I'll come back to it at some point. At some point in my life, I'm sure I'll have a problem with booze and drugs and this kind of thing. It's like, geez, man, like, I'm setting myself up for failure here. If you got to start being kinder to yourself, and that is such a 180 for me, from being such a negative, kind of matter of fact person, to just being more rounded, and kind of seeing things from different perspectives. As I said, like, with gambling, it's always about, prevent yourself first and foremost, as you were talking about with self-exclusion. Not something I did at that time, but it's my first bit of advice for anyone, is first and foremost, like, you got to limit your access to gambling, and then you've got to talk to somebody. You've really got to tell somebody, because the more you keep that in, and the more you sort of bubble away with having that inside, and it gets so difficult for people, because I feel fortunate, and I've got some sort of guilt which is completely unfounded, but it does make me feel bad that I've never been in debt. I've never maxed out credit cards. I managed to get on top of my gambling at the point where it was really at the tipping point where it could have went that way with me. Right. At that stage in my life, it's, if I didn't stop when I did, it all could have just come crumbling down. And I feel so.
You were lucky because you didn't get into, because, like, sorry, just to clarify, so you didn't get into debt from.
No, I've never had debt with gambling.
That's really
never had credit card debt. At that point in my life, I'd received a hefty amount of cash from my granddad, for he'd been keeping money aside for me for a deposit on a house.
Right.
And he says that when the day comes that you get a deposit on a house, and you'll get that money. And I got a hefty amount in my bank account, and I worked my way through $5,000 of that pretty quickly. And then it was a case of, shit, this isn't only it became real for me, because it's like, this isn't only my future, this is my wife's future as well.
Yeah.
And she's not gonna stick around for this shit, because she had no idea about my gambling at all. Right. And she literally, it was a massive reality check for me, because when I opened up about that, I was like, okay, this is what I need to do. She's like, if you don't, like, she goes, I want to be supportive and I love you, but if you don't stop gambling, I'm going to leave you. Like,
when did you tell her? When did this come into it? So you've spoken to the life coach, your friend at work. So when what is the timeline? Did you then tell your wife or girlfriend at the time, like straight away, or how did that come out?
It was around about that time. I think the coaching came after. Because this was still nobody knew about it. It was just me. Like I didn't really talk to anyone about it. And it was around about that time, and I told her, and we actually did a conversation about it. It's on my Instagram, where I asked her how she felt, like, in hindsight, 5 years on, how she felt about it. And geez, man, like, there's things that she said in there that I'd never heard before. And I completely understand. And like everything she said to me was like, I can completely get why you feel like that.
What did she say? What did she say? Yeah.
She was just like, I felt you were someone else. You were keeping a massive secret from me. I had no idea you were doing this. You must have been so good at covering this up. And now looking back in the way you were back then, it makes it a bit more sense now. She says, if you didn't open up to me at that time and was completely open with me, then we probably wouldn't have been together much longer. And she's my it's very cliched, but she is my rock. Like if I don't have, we're two peas in a pod. We've been together 10 years. If she wasn't around, then geez, man, I don't know where I would have been or what I would have been doing. So yeah, it's as I said, it was a perfect storm at that time. Getting the psychologist on the go, opening up about my gambling, actually getting the money at that time was good in a way, because it was like, the shit's about to hit the fan here. You can go one way or the other, and I managed to luckily get on top of that quickly at that time, and the coaching as well. So it's hard for me to say that to people, because everything aligned for me at that time, and it might not be that case for anyone else. Gambling, especially when you've got a family, or you've been gambling for years and years and years and years, it's such a tricky one to navigate, and it's so I can understand why people feel hopeless and how they feel that they can't ever get over gambling. So that's why my message is always like, well, there is hope. You can stop gambling, because I was able to recognize that, okay, I've done some damage here to my brain and my psyche and my mental health, and it's all about opening yourself up to trying to change that. And people will kind of fall back into gambling. It does happen, and it's happened to me a few times, until they get to the point where they're able to give it up forever. But people can reach that point. It's just you've just got to persevere, unfortunately. But the difference, with gambling, the consequences are so severe. It's so devastating when you've went a long time without gambling to then slip back up. And people, all the progress that they've made, and all the the good vibes and the feelings that they're finally beating it to be back to square one, it can be difficult for people to understand and to navigate, which I completely respect. But yeah, I just try and keep plugging away and telling people that there's always hope, and you can always get over it, because I totally believe that you can. I wouldn't be saying it otherwise.
No, of course. No, of course. I mean, yeah, it's just very recently, the local community, like where I'm born, lost. It's kind of, it's very tough, because we're very strongly led to believe that it was to do with gambling related suicide. It's a bit of a tricky one, because I don't think the coroner's report has come back and whether it's suicide or not. But I, anyway, reading between the lines, I've heard it from his father that that it was. But look, it's a tough situation to talk about, because I think gambling is so entwined with our society, and especially as a bloke, it's like, I had a question from one of the listeners who was like, how do you circumnavigate like conversations in WhatsApp groups? So like, I think I commented recently on your one of your posts, and it was about football betting and stuff like that, and being around groups of friends that obviously love betting. So for me, it's a big part of the culture. So we go horse racing. I'm from a place called Newbury, which has got a racetrack. It's like entwined with horse racing and stables and stuff like that. So everyone kind of goes racing. It's seen as a good day out. A lot of us, we go to the casino for for nights out or whatever. And then obviously football betting as well, like WhatsApp groups, a couple of WhatsApp groups that I'm on. It's just kind of, it's a bit of a cliche again, but it's just like, it's like booze, babes, and betting, it's just like these three. And it's really hard to kind of take yourself out of it. and I commented recently on one of your photos, or we had a bit of a discussion, and it's kind of, unfortunately for me, it's got to that stage where I kind of no longer really take pleasure out of like watching football anymore, because maybe there's I'm sure there's other reasons in there as well. I used to be a football referee, so maybe that's something to do with it, the fact that I've had enough of refereeing, but and putting up with the abuse, but
the abuse, yeah.
But I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on
well,
football?
that'll pass for you, man. Okay, honestly, like it takes time, because I didn't enjoy football for a long time after giving up gambling as well, because it was so hand in hand putting a bet on with football. It took me a long time to start enjoying it again. But I noticed what you said the other day is that you kind of see all the advertising and things, and it doesn't sit too well with you. I can switch that on and off now. Like if I choose to see advertising everywhere, I'll see it. And but it doesn't take away the enjoyment of the game for me.
Well, that's good,
and it's I mean it's horrific, and it's abhorrent, the amount of gambling advertising, and especially with the kits and the sponsorships.
Oh yeah.
That really grates me. I mean, if I had kids, if I'm fortunate enough to start a family one day, there's no way they're wearing a football kit with a, Paddy Power across it, or 32 red or whatever it is.
No.
So that worries me. For the time being, I'm fine. I'm in a kind of happy medium where I've been through all this shit. I'm not going to let it now. I love my football so much. I'm not going to let it
Who do you
ruin the
support, by the way?
enjoyment for me. Man, I knew you were going to ask that. I can't get into this with you. It's so complicated.
Well, you're Edinburgh. Are you from Edinburgh, right?
Okay, right. I'll get into it briefly, but it's it's a hard one for me. I grew up in Aberdeen.
All right.
All my friends were Aberdeen fans. My dad is a diehard Rangers fan, also from Aberdeen. So he brought me up a Rangers fan. So I went along with all that until I was in my early 20s. And again, to kind of throw back to what my mindset was back then, the amount of shit that was coming out my mouth, and the amount of kind of stuff I didn't believe in, stuff I wasn't interested in, and it got so mixed up with football, where I was like, this isn't me. This isn't what I like. So I literally said, I'm not going to be a Rangers fan anymore. I don't like.
Fair enough.
I don't like. I'm not going to get into it too much, but it's not me, and I'm not going to represent it, so I'm stopped. But that wasn't, for my friends, that wasn't good enough. It's like, you're a Rangers fan, kind of live with it. And I was like, no, listen, I'm done. And then literally from, I think it was maybe, 2007, 2008 onwards, I think it was their UEFA Cup run at that time, I said that I'm done, and I didn't watch a Rangers game after that. Anyway, so I went travelling, and I'd realised that football fans are just football fans. Like good football fans, they just want to chat about football. It doesn't have to be about politics, doesn't have to be about anything else. And I just felt silly. I just felt like I was a kid and I needed to do some growing up. Moved to Edinburgh, and I moved to Leith, which is where Hibernian play, Hibs, around the corner. Didn't have a team, but I wasn't going to be a Hibs fan. And again, nothing against Hibs, but it's just like, I've got nowhere to go now. I'm not a Rangers fan. I'm not an Aberdeen fan. I'm not going to be a Hibs fan. And then I moved to Gorgie. Now I literally live across the road from Tynecastle Stadium, where Hearts play.
Oh, nice.
So I've been going to a few of their games. But what I've done is I don't have a club team, and I'm going to have to go through my life without having a club team.
You're a bit of a floater.
Well, what can I do? What can I do, man? I'm not going to be accepted anywhere I go. But the thing is, I love my football so much. And I'll go watch any football. So I watch a Scottish national team, and that's a hoot. So that, like, I'll follow them until my dying days. I'll always be a Scotland fan. But I feel like I'm missing out. That's it. That's the thing. I mean, if I could go back in time, I was born in Aberdeen. I was brought up in Aberdeen. I wish I was just brought up an Aberdeen fan. It would have made things so much more simpler for me, because I miss following the team.
We'll go back, go back to.
It's not going to happen now. The ships sail. There's too much water under the bridge, and there's too much going on. But so you're a Bournemouth fan, are you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, up the cherries.
Hey, your team's playing on free telly on Monday. There's a sentence that just aged me about 10 years. BBC Monday night.
No, I was going to say I think we're going to try and sort of get together and watch it. When you mentioned about Hibs and Aberdeen, I think there was a couple of Bournemouth players that, or ex-Bournemouth players that have come and played for them. Jaden Stockley, I think, was at Aberdeen, and then Marvin Bartley was it Hibernian?
You got Ryan Fraser on your ranks, don't you?
Oh yeah, Ryan Fraser, yeah, wee man. I think he's going to leave. I think
he'll be off.
He won't sign a new contract, so he's going to be off. But he's good. But it's funny what you're saying about like not being able to sort of join in with conversations or wanting to join in conversation with your friends, because the sort of as the same WhatsApp group that we kind of just talk about betting and stuff like that. It's not just betting, but we'll get together and we'll classically get together in a pub, and there's always this ongoing argument amongst us about does Wayne Rooney get the credit that he deserves, and we'll just sort of roll up a suit, and we really will just talk about football. There's very little else that goes on, so yeah, I can totally relate to. It's like my brother as well. We used to work in Waitrose as you do as a supermarket checkout, and he said it was great. Just a bloke comes along, 9 times out of 10, you just have a chat about football. Like it's the common ground, I think, amongst men.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it's great. It's great. But I'm trying to swing it back to the gambling and stuff like that. So so can you maybe just tell us a bit more about Roulette? I want to say Rule It Out or Roulette Out.
It doesn't matter what you say.
Are you sure?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I was going to say Rule It Out, but yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah.
It's probably, the name's probably a bit misleading because it sounds like I'm anti-gambling, and I'm not at all. Like I'm all for gambling reform and better player protection.
Yeah.
But Roulette, it's just a play on words.
No, I think it's good. It's just no. I was. Please don't think I was criticising it for 1 minute.
No, not at all.
Just trying to get clarity from the horse's mouth, There.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I forget how I spell it. So yeah, an underscore here, a full stop there, an exclamation mark over there, whatever. But the point is, as long as people can find me, I mean, as long as people can reach me, it's great. No, it's been good, man. Like as I said, I took a wee break recently because I was just becoming so obsessed with my phone, and I had so many parallels to feeling like I was gambling, just having that extension there all the time. And I never gambled on my phone, so I really don't know what that feels like. But I can imagine that if I did these days, it would feel a lot like having 4 social media platforms sort of buzzing in the background all the time,
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll keep posting, but it's got to be limited. I have to treat it like a hobby and like a job in a way, even though it's not. But I need to kind of limit my time on there because it becomes unhealthy if your social medias are on 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that for a couple of years. And the support and the outreach has been nothing but positive, and it's been really inspiring to see the progress people are making, and I've had such good feedback from people, so it's been such a good experience. And the reason that I started it is because I wanted, when I was gambling, I wish there was someone available that knew what I was talking about, that I could relate to a wee bit, and I wanted to be that person for others, and it's been great. So it's been good. It's been a journey, and it's been making me really dig deep and think about gambling, I wasn't really expecting to do that. As I said earlier, it's like I got to a point where I'm 5 years without a bet now, and I was at a point where I was like, okay, let's put a full stop on this, part of my life. Let's put that behind me.
Yeah.
And hey, I don't need to think about gambling again. But then I was like, man, I've got all this experience and my story to tell. Then it'd be such a waste and such a shame for me to not share that with others and allow for people to interact and connect with me about it, because we're few and far between online, and I know that there's people that want to share their story, and I know there's people that want to open up about it and they can't for whatever reason. But if you're sharing your story and I'm sharing mine and others are doing the same, then if that gives people the confidence to be able to open up and reach out, then that's the most important thing.
Absolutely.
The page. So
absolutely. No, I think it's absolutely brilliant. I can echo your comments more, and maybe 5 years free as well for bet is like Jesus, It's interesting that you say, like, obviously, because both you and I, we've got a, like, what they call, like, like a lived-in experience, like we've got our experience and story to tell, because that was a big part of, like, my recovery was, or, like, by the way, I've only really just stopped betting, like, maybe not even a year ago, right? But it was, for me, it was like, it was one of those horrible, like, long relationships where you just like, I should have cut this off like years ago, but it's just like dragged out, so it's sort of almost like faded out. But interestingly, like, I don't know, I got some private counselling, and that was the most help I kind of got, really. But it's interesting that you say, like, having people that will hopefully, like, appeal to, because for me, like, I had a friend of a friend, or an acquaintance, who said, look, I've been to Gamblers Anonymous, I think you should too, should go as well. And for me, that was a massive barrier, because I was like, I've actually got to physically go to somewhere. And even just the name Gamblers Anonymous, for me, it's just got connotations of, like, a bit dirty, a bit kind of secretive, a bit full of shame, full of guilt. And I mean, I'm not trying to dig them out at all, but obviously there's other help available, and it's really, I don't know for you, but it becomes really easy for me to now go to people, oh, you should just get help, you should just ring up this line or reach out. But I really do hope, and it's great to see with you as well, like, people are reaching out as well. So yeah, so sorry, not much of a question. I'm trying just sort of giving you a bit more of a point, but I don't know, is there, I feel like obviously we could talk, at much more length, but is there anything else that you want to, I feel like we could, before we sort of wrap things up, is there anything else you want to mention or you want to talk about that you've not spoken about? Yeah, I don't know, anything else, any other
we can always do this again if you want, bud. No, we've covered the main basis here. But yeah, as I said, like, people, I encourage people to keep reaching out, keep telling their story, and there is a kind of growing movement and a really sort of supportive online community, over on Twitter as well, and then Instagram, of people telling their stories. And if we can connect more and get a wee network of people going, then it's great. And then if we can, I think an idea of mine would just be to be able to sort of signpost. Obviously, I'm always going to signpost somebody professional help as well.
Yeah, of course.
If they need it, I'm no expert. It's all lived experience with me. But it'd be really nice if, like, a good idea would be to get all the details of people that are doing this sort of advice and support online, and just giving that to someone and saying, look, you've got about a group of 10-20 people here that are happy to hear from you. If you want to shoot the shit a wee bit, if you want to just ask a question, then you can. I'm always open for that kind of thing, and it's never once been abused, and it's never once been problematic, and it's always been respectful. And there's so many good people that just need to get the first sort of bit of support going and get the ball rolling with it. And if I can be that person, or anyone else like yourself, then that's all we can really do, bud. But yeah.
I think that's a great place to end, or to wrap things up. So I just want to go on record, mate, and just say, like, mate, this has been great. This is like,
awesome.
Like, I don't know. It's really interesting, because, like, having spoken to a few people, like, people that are in recovery or former addicts, if you want to call it that. I don't know. I know it's very funny to the labels that you call it. Is it compulsive gambler?
I struggled with this for a while to settle on.
Ostracized like a few people by saying, like, addicts and stuff like that. But what I found, mate, is that, like, I don't know. Maybe it's because we've shared something. Maybe it's because we've shared this pain, or like this addiction. But the people that I've spoken to, it's like straight away, I'm just like, you're my kind of person. Like, I'm like, yeah, we can go for a pint. I'm like, you're friends, But it's like, it's just it's the community's great, and
that's what keeps me going, because as I said, everyone is very supportive and understanding, because we do have that connection. It's important, because it's you understand. I think it's like there's no barriers there.
There's been, I think for me, there was almost like so much sort of lack of connection, that to now have the connection, it's like, oh my God, I'm tapping into something that,
Definitely, there is something to that, because you'll know yourself. You're just sort of, mulling your way through life, carrying this addiction on your shoulders, not really telling anyone, and all of a sudden it's like, opening up to everyone. So yeah, people have got a lot to say. But it's and I think for me it's important to keep. I mean, I'm not gonna sort of beat a dead horse. Like in my Roulette Out page, I pretty much said everything that I can say, because I'm not going to start talking about things that I don't know what I'm talking about. It's always going to be based on my experience, and it's always going to be based on something that I feel confident enough talking about. So this is why I've started the blog page, because I used to write a lot when I was younger, and I get so much more out of writing because I dig deep with it. If I can sit there in silence for a couple of hours and start writing an article or a story, I go to places I didn't even think I was going to be going to, and I find it quite therapeutic. That's my thing. Talking in video and trying to make a page look appealing and stuff. That's all new to me, and it's not that important. As long as you get your message out, and as long as people can understand your message, it doesn't matter how it looks or how swanky it is. If people do need your advice and support, they'll find you regardless. So
no, definitely. All right, mate. Well,
cool.
Well, I'll speak to you soon. So thanks once again.
Sweet. Cool. Right. Well, hope Bournemouth get the win on Monday. Do you know where you're playing?
Cherries.
where are you playing on Monday?
We got Crystal Palace this Saturday, I think. Saturday evening.
Okay, maybe it's Saturday night I'm talking about.
Yeah, Saturday night, versus Palace.
Yeah, I feel like I have to watch it now.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a barn burner.
Ryan Fraser, go on, Ryan Fraser.
Yeah.
First, I'm
if he's fit.
Yeah, I'm talking about betting. I'm going for Ryan Fraser, first team to score. First player to score. No. Yeah. Yeah. No.
All right, man.
All right. I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks for having me on, and nice conversation. Take it easy, buddy.
It was a real pleasure talking to Darren and hearing his story. Thanks once again to him for talking so openly and sharing his tips and advice with us. As always, plenty of takeaways from the conversation. I can relate to a lot of what he said. How addictive roulette is and how out of control you feel whilst playing. How easy you can hide online betting and how unrestricted it is. You can bet 24/7, 365 days a year. The impact a gambling addiction has, not only on your finances, but your mental health as well. And reaching out for professional support and help, feeling a lot better for opening up about your gambling and gaining support from your loved ones. In the next episode, I'd like to investigate more around online gambling, particularly slot machines, which, like roulette, is another highly addictive product. Let's find out in the next episode of The Invisible Addiction.